Why not fantasy football? Well, my season's over. How's everybody else doing? I'm 0-4 now. Uh, I'm fucked. So, it was a fun season. I'll see you guys next week. No, I guess I kind of have to do these reviews since I took off last week. Um, I guess I'll start with the Big Blue Wrecking Crew, who's now 4-0. Coming into this matchup, both these guys were 3-0 coming into the week against Rich Newman, Box of Tools. Pete does get a very big win here. Gets a great performance from Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey. Gets a good performance from Jared Goff. Puts up 20 points from three guys, and Will Dissly gives him 11 plus. When you're facing off a guy who's starting, Russell Wilson only gives him 10 points. Adam Thielen only 6 total yards, and Green Bay's defense gives him negative points. With a less than 70 point output, Rich isn't going to win very many weeks that way. This is his first loss of the season. Pete does take the undefeated streak another week further. Be interesting to see how long this is going to go. Carson Wentz and Jared Goff are a really strong 1-2 at quarterback. His running backs are pretty solid there, with Frank Gore even putting up almost 16 points on his bench. The wide receiving core of Keenan Allen, Tyrell Williams, Curtis Samuel, Deshaun Jackson, Robbie Anderson. Marvin Jones Jr. None of these guys really jump out as an obvious number one, but combined, they're all really solid. On the other side of the coin, Rich was going to run with David Johnson and Zeke Elliott. Neither one of those guys scored more than 13.9 was the most that David Johnson put out. 1 yard short of 100 receiving yards, which would have made it a much better day for him. But, Zeke ran into the really difficult New Orleans defense, and Russell Wilson was running for his life against Arizona. Still put up, 240 passing yards and a touchdown, but did get sacked 4 times. He loses John Ross to IR. He's going to be gone for 8 weeks. Going to have to find a guy to plug in there. Be interesting to see where these two guys go going forward, but they're both pretty strong teams in the early going. Let's go ahead and give the defending champion his due. He crushed me this week, 128-80. He gets a great performance from Aaron Rodgers, Cooper Kupp, LaShawn McCoy, Pittsburgh's defense, and his kicker of Joey Sly. On the other side for me, Austin Eckler and Phillip Rivers gave me a great game. Everybody else, not even close. 6 points was the highest output from anyone else of Chris Thompson, and I left Ronald Jones on the bench with a 14.5 point output, and Dallas's defense with 11 points there. Going with Saquon Barkley, Antonio Brown, and Melvin Gordon as my first 3 picks looked really, really good, but it was incredibly risky, and I knew that. I'm drafting very risky every year in this league because one of these years it has to hit. One of these years I will win that fucking title. But by all intents and purposes, this season is over for me. The 0-4 start is incredibly difficult to dig out of. In fact, it's been done. It's been done by Bobby Russo in the past, but it's really, really hard to do. And I don't think that this is the squad that's going to do it unless Saquon Barkley really is superhuman and he comes back after missing only 1 week. I will be shocked if that happens, but I'll be very happy about it. Again, Mike had a great week. He's got a pretty strong lineup here after not drafting a running back in the first 5 rounds. His wide receiving core still leaves a bit to be desired. Cooper Kupp gave him a great week, but, John Brown was not good. Julio Jones was not great. Zach Ertz was disappointing. It'll be interesting weeks for him going forward until he gets Tyreek Hill back and AJ Green. Once he gets those two back to pair with Julio Jones, then this is going to be a really dangerous team. So to split the first 4 games while you're waiting for guys to get healthy, it's a great way to go, and that's why Mike's a 3-time champion. I give him all the credit in the world. We move on to another former champion, Adam Kirby, who's 3-1 here after a win over 2-2 Ray Leclerc. Solid win for Adam here. Gets a good performance from Baker Mayfield. Devontae Adams puts up 23 points. Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones give him a combined 27 and change. Austin Hooper was the real MVP here with 18 points in the tight end spot to only half a point for Vernon Davis on Ray's side. Kicker and defense was 19 points apiece, so that's a wash. And the flex spots were kind of disappointing on both sides, with Marlon Mack only getting 39 yards and Mecole Hardman scoring negative 1.1. Mike Evans gave Ray a decent game. Pat Mahomes was good, but it's not where you want Patrick Mahomes to be scoring. You know, you're expecting him to be in the 30s every single week, and putting up less than 21 this week with no passing touchdowns is pretty disappointing. And you're not going to win very many weeks if that's what he's going to produce for you. On the benches, nothing on Ray's side. Nothing to write home about other than Larry Fitzgerald's 47 yards. And that's still disappointing, but it's better than the negative points he got from Mecole Hardman and better than the 23 yards from Will Fuller. On Adam's side, yeah, maybe he probably wants to play Seattle's defense and Cortland Sutton, but he got the win. So at the end of the day, like, you're not going to nitpick here when you get the win. Again, Adams 3-1, Ray's at 500. Adams doing much better here than he is in the Chaos League. So we'll see how these guys do going forward. I am not the only winless team in the league, luckily enough. That would also be Jamie Hannon, who's 0-4 to start the year after getting trounced by Colonel Sanders, Frank Bucco, who starts his career here in WNFL at 2-2. A very admirable start to the year. But Nick Chubb really carried the way for him. 41.5 points this week, 165 yards and 3 touchdowns. Add in the fact that he has Todd Gurley, who went for 2 rushing touchdowns, and a 25-point performance out of New England's defense. And you're going to win every single week. You get those 3. On the other side, Wayne Gallman does get Jamie 21 points, and Robert Woods gets him 21 points, but the rest was pretty disappointing. You know, Kyler Murray puts out 10.5, whereas on his bench, Jacoby Brissett puts up over 25, and A.J. Brown, the wide receiver for Tennessee, puts up 20 on his bench. You know, if he had played him instead of Marquise Brown, that would have been a much better output. Frank, again, is 2-2, sits in 7th place overall. It'll be interesting to see how he does here in his first season, but he's definitely performing much better than I think some people would have given him credit for. And I think he can be a real force in this league. Surprisingly enough, we've had one trade this year to get George Kittle over to Frank's team, and then we've had 2 trades, actually. Frank got George Kittle and then turned around and traded him away for Vance McDonald and Dak Prescott. Interestingly enough, this is a league that's very short on trades from year to year. There aren't all that many, but bringing Frank in and having that dynamic of him making multiple trades in a season, I thought was a great idea bringing him into this league. I congratulate him on a good start to the season at 500. He does sit in 7th place overall, 3rd place in the Billy Madison division. But again, credit to you, Frank. Keep it up. You're doing great. We move on. Pair of 1-3 teams after the first month here. Dave Langworth gets a good win over Bobby Russo here. Dave gets a 99-76 win. Key players here. For Dave, Jarvis Landry put up 167 yards, got a good game out of Josh Jacobs and Devontae Freeman. Stephon Diggs finally shows up for him. Will Lutz and Chicago's defense puts up 28 total. Daniel Jones outscored Deshaun Watson, but I don't think that's a play you ever make on a week-to-week basis. The disappointments are there for Dave as well, though. Nelson Aguilar not getting a catch and Delaney Walker only putting up 4 yards. That's pretty disappointing. But when the rest of your team, with the exception of your quarterback, put up 10 or more points, you'll take that every single week, because you have to assume that if that's going to happen, then your quarterback is going to perform more weeks than not, and you'll get a lot of wins. For Bobby, disappointing week. Losing Ben Roethlisberger early really has handcuffed him. He's gone with Mason Rudolph as the replacement. Juju Smith-Schuster has fallen off a cliff with his production, and I think maybe he was overrated to come into the season anyway, because he has to become the number one now. And though he had a great season last year, he definitely had Antonio Brown on the field, and the drop in quarterback really limits his value going forward. Chris Carson put up a good game for him, but Malcolm Brown doesn't perform for the third week in a row. Darren Waller was disappointing. Christian Kirk was less than stellar. Just a really down week for the Munchies this week. I'm hoping that he can make a comeback here, because it looks a little rough for Bobby going forward. Starting off 1-3. Granted, it's better than 0-4, but it's really difficult to dig yourself out of that kind of a hole. Matchup of the week this week brought 3-0 Jared Clark against 2-1 Ken Ames. These guys have a matchup very close. Only half a point separates them, and Ken gets the win, 111.33 to 110.83. So yeah, half a point difference between the two of them. Lamar Jackson puts up a good game again. This guy's been really good for Ken this year. I'm impressed with the foresight to grab him in the draft. Granted, Jameis Winston would have sealed it for him much more comfortably, but he got the win, so I'm not going to nitpick here. Chris Godwin, enormous game, 172 and 2 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook, another big game, 35 and 35, so that's 70 total yards and a touchdown. And the Los Angeles Chargers defense scores him 11 points. Those four performances there are the only guys who score more than, looks like, 7.5 points for him. On his bench, though, Jalen Samuels gives him 15. Darrell Williams gives him 15. And I already mentioned Jameis Winston putting up 37 plus. Had he had those three guys in the lineup, this wouldn't have even been close. But it was, and Jared got great games out of James Conner before he went down with the ankle injury, and Kerryon Johnson gave him a good game. Houston's defense, Mason Crosby, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, and Michael Thomas all scored between 8.5 and 10 points. Allen Robinson and Dede Westbrook are the kind of disappointments here with 77 and 66 yards respectively. Had he played Geronimo Allison for either one of those guys, he would have won this week. He's kind of stuck in an interesting spot here. Matt Ryan's not performing up to the especially this week, performing up to the aspirations that everyone thought. And he's got T.Y. Hilton who's injured, and he's got Rashad Penny who's really stuck behind Chris Carson. So 2 weeks in a row, Rashad Penny hasn't even touched the ball. Be interesting to see where Jared goes here, but both of these guys have a really solid start to the season at 3-1. Though neither one of them lead their divisions. That belongs to Rich, who leads the Bobby Boucher division with a 3-1 record, 3-0 in the division. Jared does lead the Happy Gilmore division at 3-1 with a 3-0 divisional record over Adam, who is also 3-1. And, of course, the undefeated Big Blue Wrecking Crew of Pete Langworth lead the way in the Billy Madison division at 4-0. Right now, as it stands, the playoff, the three wild cards would be Ken, Adam, and Ray, with Frank and Mike being the first out. But again, a long way to go. First month down, great season for everybody but me. I hope everybody enjoys their year, because I am not. Have a great week, guys.